This review for Moonraker has spoilers. For week 11 of the weekly James Bond movie marathon, counting down until the release of No Time to Die, the 11th movie in the James Bond franchise is Moonraker. My rating for Moonraker is a 2 out of 5, and here's why. Moonraker, originally released back in 1979, it is directed by Lewis Gilbert. Moonraker stars Roger Moore as his fourth time playing James Bond, Lois Chiles, Richard Kiel, and Michael Lonsdale. The theme song of Moonraker, called Moonraker, is sung by Shirley Bassey. This is her third time singing a James Bond theme song, with the previous two being Diamonds Are Forever and Goldfinger. The story of Moonraker pits James Bond to investigate missing space shuttles. Thus, it would lead him to go to such locales as California, and then Italy, and then ending in Rio de Janeiro, then the story ending in space. I have to say, Moonraker is pretty much one of the wackiest James Bond films there is. I know they did it in good faith to compete with the Star Wars craze that happened a couple years ago. At that time, with what they tried to do pales in comparison to what Star Wars did. The story is self-explanatory. We already find out that the villain is Hugo Drax, and that he was stealing his own space shuttles in order to fulfill his mission of a mass genocide of the planet Earth, to repopulate it with the most beautiful and strongest specimens from his secret space station. He would launch these space balls of nerve gas from his space station, which would kill the human race. But it will leave the animals and all other insects alive. Anyways, pretty much simply, this movie is just pure entertainment. Again, they try to, compete with the Star Wars craze at that time period. Although, with the Bond girl, again, it was one of those where she was Bond's equal, as she herself was a CIA agent, also investigating Hugo Drax by being undercover as a doctor working for Hugo Drax. In the first half of the movie, the right-hand man to Hugo Drax was Chang, but once Chang got taken out by Bond in Italy, Hugo Drax had to look for another assassin for hire. And lo and behold, like from the beginning of the movie, we see Jaws attack James Bond in another mission in the prologue. And then he gets hired by Hugo Drax to take care of James Bond as well. The action sequences in Moonraker compared to The Spy Who Loved Me, the previous movie, once again they went over the top with action. There was an action sequence in Venice, in the canals of Venice, and it was ridiculous how they elaborated this plan to attack Bond with a fake funeral with a guy in a coffin. It was utterly ridiculous. And then that boat so happened to have hovercraft abilities. Anyways, it was ridiculous. But it's one of those that you just have to let it go and just enjoy it for what it is. Although there is a very thrilling, or I guess horror-like moment in this movie with Corinne, a worker for the Hugo Drax Corporation. She fell into the wills of Bond and helped Bond into Hugo Drax's study to get, information. Hugo Drax found that out, and then Hugo Drax would eventually kill Corinne. And that scene was actually really scary, where we had Corinne run through the woods, and there's these attack dogs that would eat her alive, basically. There was an action scene on Sugarloaf Mountain in Rio de Janeiro, which was kind of interesting because there's one part where Jaws cuts a cable with his teeth, yet the gondola doesn't fall. To me, that was a major flub because it shows that he cuts the cable that is, moving the gondola, the cable car. Like with a lot of these James Bond films, and their action scenes are set pieces among the great backdrops of the world. I do like Moonraker's effort to simulate zero gravity versus gravity, but astronauts wouldn't be wearing what they're wearing when they're going into space like that. But it is fantasy, so suspension of disbelief. Although I did find the final battle sequence in space pretty fun between the, whatever you call the US Space Force, I guess you could call it Space Force, and Hugo Drax's men. Basically they had their kind of like rocket packs as they float in space to propel them. And then the guns were actually centered in their chest, and I guess they shoot like this. It made it feel like it's one of those starfighter battles in Star Wars. In the last half of the movie where we see Jaws, we see him take a turn to be a baby face over a heel, where he ends up falling in love with a girl. Since Jaws found love and she worked with Hugo Drax, and Bond would talk to Hugo Drax about how Drax would eliminate somebody who wasn't perfect in his eyes. And Jaws realized that. That's where he made the change to a babyface over a heel, over being a bad guy, so that way he could be with his girl and assist Bond in doing what's good for the entire world. But simply put, this is the most ridiculous James Bond film. There's a lot more ridiculous things that happen in this movie, but it's so much. But I mean, overall, Moonraker is a lot of fun, but in my opinion, it is the worst of all the James Bond films. With that, that is my review of Moonraker. Next week, in the weekly James Bond movie marathon, it's the 12th movie in the franchise, For Your Eyes Only. And by the way, they get it correct this time. At the end of the credits, they say James Bond will appear next in For Your Eyes Only. Make sure to subscribe to the SpellGo YouTube channel if you haven't. Thank you for watching, everyone.